And now for our feature presentation.
You're listening to the JB and Goldwater Show. Live, loud, and online.
He's going to go into the end zone.
Puts it up. Yes! There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
American football. It's finally the one. American football has won the Triple Crown.
And Barnes hits one high. It's a dig. It is out of here. High fly ball into right field. She is gone.
Unbelievable! A home run for Gibson, and the Tigers have won the game 5-4. I don't believe what I just saw.
Here are your hosts, Jamie Bradford and Darren Goldwater.
All right, greetings and a good Friday afternoon, and welcome aboard the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online, 12:02 p.m., and we are headed towards the weekend. It is July the 17th. Welcome, Darren Goldwater, Jamie Bradford. He is at Darren Goldwater. I am at Sports Radio JB. Collectively, we are at JB and Goldwater on Twitter. You can watch us every day on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter by typing in JB and Goldwater. You can also listen to us, as many of you do, on the Podbean app. All of it is free. You can go to jbandgoldwatershow.com, jbandgoldwatershow.com, if you would like to send us a question, comment, concern, critique, something like that. An email. You can email us. And you can figure out everything we do collectively on this show right there on one platform, jbandgoldwatershow.com. 843-321-8893 is our phone number, 843-321-8893. Darren, it's packed again today. You and I continue to try to fit as much as we can into these 2-hour programs, and that is no different today. Might be this sucker, before you know it's going to be over. Rafael Esparza will join us in about 7 minutes from Vegas. Phil Steele will join us at 12:30 this afternoon as well. Looking forward to speaking with him. We will dive in deep about Clemson, South Carolina, the ACC, the SEC, and take a quick drive around the rest of the country with the man himself, Phil Steele, whose magazine still is the most detailed and really maybe the most accurate preseason college football magazine that you can read out there, and I would suggest all of you do so. Order it if you have not done. It comes within like 1 to 3 days express shipping. I mean, it's at your doorstep. So that's always fun, and so we'll talk to him about that. And then Michael Flint at 1:30 today, part 2 of an 8-part series on South Carolina football. We'll preview the 2020 defensive line for the Gamecocks. A lot of other stuff to get to. We're obviously going to talk about the Redskins today. We've got a bunch of other football notes to get to. And the Power 5 NCAA guidelines, that is all forthcoming, Darren. But real quick, and not to just keep rambling on here and not let you talk, but real quick, let me just give an update on what's going on at Memorial. It's been a bad day for Tiger. He's 5 over. He's 4 over overall, and he's 2 below the cut line. The cut line as of now is 2 over par. Tiger's not going to make it. So he's going to have to really kick it into gear these last few holes if he'd like to have a shot to play the weekend in Dublin, Ohio at Muirfield Village. He played respectably well yesterday and started out decent this morning with a bird, but it all fell apart. He double bogeyed 10, and right now that double bogey has him out of the weekend, so he'll try to climb back into it. John Rahm, though, leads at 8 under, 5 under today. He's through 14, and then Gary Woodland, Tony Finau, and Ryan Palmer are all at 7 under par. They're all still on the course as well. And Ches Reavie is right there at 5 under. Clemson's Lucas Glover, by the way, at 3 under, even par today through 17. So he's in the hunt. and that is what it looks like up in Ohio where it's 79 degrees. It's not 79 here. I know that.
No, I hope you watched Tiger yesterday because today he went off before coverage started, and if you're not subscribing to PGA Tour Live, then you didn't see him today, and you're not going to see him this weekend. Yeah, so I hope you got your little glimpse of Tiger and your fill yesterday. I did.
Yeah, he doesn't look hurt or anything like that. He
looks like a mess.
It looks like a guy who honestly hasn't played in a tournament in 5 months. That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
And Tiger's hit some beautiful shots in this thing, and then he's hit some that just haven't been good. And his putting has been off, which has been the real key for Tiger over the last couple of days. I was watching him this morning. It's just off. He's just off with the putter.
And he's a mess off the tee today.
Yeah.
I mean, a disaster
off
the tee
but the
today.
thing about that, though, is that's never – I mean, the last year or so, Tiger has been better tee to green. He's actually been pretty good. But historically in his career, he's never been the best, most accurate driver. He's always been the best at being able to recover.
Right.
Recovery shots with Tiger, no one's ever been better than him in the history of the sport. I mean, he's just been unbelievable. And generally, what he doesn't get done tee to green, he'll get done on the green. He'll save himself there. And that's where he can survive some of these shots if he just makes putts, and he hasn't made them.
Well, yeah, but his game changed. I mean, when his back got hurt and when he's come back, his game has changed. He's no longer the guy that can really survive being wild off the tee anymore because he's not hitting the ball as long.
That's true. Yeah.
And he doesn't have the strength to recover like he used to have the strength. Like some of those shots in the British Open where he would take a tree out of the ground with, recovering from whatever waspy grasp up to his waist that he was in. I mean, he's not that guy anymore.
That's right.
So he has to be more accurate if he wants to compete.
Well, you're right about that. There's no doubt. We'll continue to update you throughout the afternoon on the Memorial, and Tiger Woods, we'll see by the end of this program here, he'll be in the clubhouse, and so we'll see if he is able to at least approach that cut line. Right now, again, 2 shots behind it. All right, Raphael's coming up in about 3 minutes, so you can just let us know when you get him teed up over there, and you'll see his beautiful face from Las Vegas up on the screen. Yesterday, the guidelines released by the NCAA in accordance with the Power 5. Of note, the NCAA plans to do the exact same thing with the Group of 5, and so my question would be, why? I mean, we're all human, right? I mean, don't we all want to be safe in the same way? So we'll see what those look like. I don't know. But there were some interesting notes in there, and we're going to talk about some of this today, Darren. The 72, you mentioned a lot of this on the program yesterday because some of this was trickling out as we were on the air through, I think, Ross Dellinger with SI.com. But once a week testing is what, again, a lot of this is guideline. This isn't mandatory, but the Power 5 commissioners have all said, look, we're going to adhere to the guidelines.
Well, they want to because one of the biggest issues is the fact that if testing is not uniform across leagues and across even within a league, then there's no way to actually compete because you don't know exactly how Team A is handling things versus Team B. So,
well, that's been the whole point of doing just conference scheduling only.
Right. So it has to happen that there is uniformity, and at least now the NCAA is putting out these guidelines, and part of the guidelines are this is what will constitute an end of the season, and whether it's for the entire college football landscape or a team or a league, there's a lot of stuff in there.
Well, there's a lot of stuff in there, hopefully, first and foremost, to keep the players safe. And then second of all, to try to get as many games in as we possibly can. So once a week, they want you to be tested within 72 hours of a game. And positive tests are 10 days in isolation. But that also means 3 consecutive days of no symptoms without medication. So that could come within the 10 days, but it also could come after the 10 days. So you could be in isolation for 10 days on meds, but once you come off those meds, you're like, man, I'm feeling a little ill. Well, guess what? You're gonna be hanging around by yourself until you got 3 straight days of nothing without medication before they'll let you back out, on the field. So that's part of it. If you have high risk contact with a positive case, then you must quarantine 14 days, no matter what. Doesn't matter if you have symptoms or not. It's 14 days. Shut it down. That being said, now, look, that obviously has an opportunity to wipe out a whole football team, basically.
Yes, it does.
But high-risk contact is also defined by being within 6 feet of a positive tested player for more than 15 minutes without wearing a mask.
Without one of you, at least one of you wearing a mask.
Without one of you, exactly. So if you're just standing next to somebody, which never happens, especially for 15 minutes on a practice field, they're practicing. They only have so much time to do it. If you're just standing next to somebody without a mask on for 15 minutes, yeah, you're there. You're in that quarantine. But if you've got masks on and the one thing that I do have a question on there, does that mean if you have a helmet on, whether you have the mouth shield or not? Okay.
No, does not count.
All right. So if you're just out there playing against somebody and you do a rep and then you back up plus 6 feet and then you get back down and you hit somebody, that will not constitute this 15 minutes. I looked into that. I actually texted somebody this morning. They said no. So these coaches are going to be putting into place a lot of different practice guidelines they haven't done before. Offensive line, defensive line, they crack each other's helmets. They'll back up. They'll redo things. They'll get back down. They'll get ready to go.
Yep.
So there's a lot of stuff that is at play here, and so I'm glad they defined that. There's much more on that. We'll talk much more about that throughout the afternoon.
Yeah, I'm going to throw this up right here. We do have Raphael. We're going to get to you, bud, here in 1 second. I'm throwing up on the screen here if you're watching. This is one of the most important graphics that came out yesterday, and it shows you where the cases were nationally when the NCAA started having their conversations about a return to sport. There is a line showing where they thought we would be now versus where we currently are, and that separation is in the range of 300, 350. I mean, it's wide apart. So that curve and that slope upwards has to come down. It's not just about on the field and the players.
Right.
This has to come. The public is required to make some decisions. That's right.
Yeah, and that's and I'll read basically 1 through 5 in just a little while. Details, the document details several conditions that would result in a school discontinuing competition, and that is part of this. So we're going to get to all of that, so hang tight. That's coming up here in just a little while. But first, we go to Vegas, and that's where we find our friend Rafael Esparza with MyBookie.ag, who, of course, as always, is intently following Tiger Woods on the golf course. What's up, brother?
What's going on, guys?
Well, we're trying to cram as much as we can into 2 hours, so I appreciate you accommodating our schedule today. We do have Phil Steele coming up next. And folks can follow along in this segment as we do every week by going to mybookie.ag. If you've never done this, you get up to $1,000 sign-on bonus with your first deposit at mybookie.ag, and that's where this guy tees it up for you every week to have some fun in the sports world and beyond, as we've come to know. But golf, Tiger, most importantly, Rafael, with Tiger back this week, and he might not be back this weekend if he continues playing the way he's playing today. But what I'm getting at here, leading into this tournament yesterday and today, how did all of this portray itself in Vegas with the return of the biggest name in the sport?
I mean, tickets were more written this week for the whole tournament just because of probably him. But, I mean, there's a lot of big names besides Tiger, which – let me get this straight. Tiger shot the first 3 holes yesterday was pretty good. You thought he was minus 20 after the 5th hole, what Twitter was telling me. I mean, Twitter was, oh, Tiger this, Tiger that. Where is he at now? People on Twitter, where's Tiger at right now? He's going to be on my couch this weekend watching the rest of the golf with me the way he's shooting right now. So, I just feel bad. I mean, I know he's the creme of the creme and he carried the sports. Let's talk about John Rahm, who's shot a -8 right now. No one's mentioning him. Gary Woodland, who's been on fire so far. But no, we have to talk about what Tiger did. Right now, Tiger might not even make the cut. Who cares what Tiger did?
Yeah, Gary Woodland and John Rahm, Ryan Palmer. I mean, these guys are all at the top of the leaderboard. How about Tony Finau? Only one under today, but by virtue of what he did yesterday, having the lead coming into round number 2, he's a shot back. I think he's on 16, Rafael, if you're watching. So he's at 7 under. But that's a good group there at the top.
Yeah, I mean, those are big names, but let's figure out what color does Tiger have red on today? No, he's got blue on because he probably won't wear red on Sunday because he might not be there on Sunday.
I mean, I love you, man. I mean, there's so many guys in our age range. I mean, we're just conditioned to love Tiger. So it's nice when at least someone can bring some levity to the situation. I was trying to do that actually yesterday and today. Like, look, I'm not going to sit here and say he's the best golfer in the world. We haven't seen him play in 5 months, and he started out fine. But this is a tune-up for him. He's trying to get ready for the majors.
And he's probably going to be one of the betting favorites for the favorites. But again, I have no idea why. It's not like he's been blowing up the golf courses every time he's out there, unless it's going to be raining and his partner's going to split his pants during a golf outing. Then I just don't see it happening. I mean, give these younger golfers some love. How about we do that? Because let's face it, Tiger's not going to golf for the rest of his life. So we need to prepare for Tiger to be walking around in a cane with knee artificial implants because he's not going to be playing forever.
Well, that's what's so great about the game now. There are so many great young players like Justin Thomas and Morikawa, who won last week, and DeChambeau, and the list goes on and on and on.
Bryson's having a tough week too. That 423-yard drive did nothing for him. He is one over. I'm anxious to see what he does today. Do you have a name that you're keeping an eye on that is not at the top of the leaderboard? Let's say, Ches Reeves right there at 5 under. I mentioned Finau, Woodland, Ron Palmer above him. Somebody below that 5 or 4 under to maybe keep an eye on as we get towards the end of this round this afternoon and into the weekend?
I think Steele and Glover are interesting names. I think they can do something. But come on, Sergio Garcia, where are you at? Start fading. I faded you against this whole tournament. Why are you shooting -1? You need to be on my couch this weekend because I have Justin Day as for a head-to-head matchup. I need Sergio Garcia to be horrible today.
Oh, you need him to be horrible. All right, that's good because you were just pumping up the younger guys, and now you're talking Sergio. Like, that's not a young buck anymore.
No, but I need him to fade for my wallet, not just for my emotions.
I'll tell you what I'm actually surprised with is, I know that we have a couple at 8 under and a couple at 7 under, but the way that this course has played this weekend compared to last weekend, it's the same course, and it's played remarkably different.
Yes, completely. I mean, I had to do a double take when I was doing some write-ups for other companies. I'm like, wait a minute, this is the same golf course they played last week. So it totally kind of scrambled me. But, yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a totally different setup. And you have a totally different golfer mentality on here because you have a lot of big names that were in here last week.
Yeah, no question about that. On Twitter at VSI Doc Sports, without the K, at VSI Doc Sports, DOC. There's Rafael Esparza joining us live from Viva Las Vegas. So do you, as a fan of sport, Rafael, do you feel a little bit of a return to normalcy? I mean, we had NASCAR, the All-Star race on Wednesday night. There was about 20,000 fans in the stands up in Bristol. We've got the golf tournament this weekend. We're now less than a week away from the start of Major League Baseball. Obviously, UFC has been fighting. You've got soccer in play. There are sports that we can find on TV and more soon. Obviously, the big name to drop still, or the big sport, we're still waiting to find out what happens with football, at least the college football side. The NFL, even though plans aren't in place for the preseason, it looks like they're planning to play. They're just trying to figure out how to do it. But do you feel a little bit of a return to normalcy this week and into next week with all of these sports intertwining a little bit?
I don't want to say about normalcy, but let's face it, if you're in my kind of industry or you just love sports, next 3 weeks are going to be complete chaos because not only do you have all those sports that you mentioned that are still going, but let's throw in baseball, let's throw in the NBA, let's throw in the NHL. Before you had nothing to watch on TV, now people are going to be buying more TVs to try to watch everything all at once because there's going to be multiple sports going on. So it's just going to be interesting. And I'm going to tell people, don't just push away soccer, KBO baseball, NASCAR, UFC, just because the almighty American sports are playing baseball, NBA, because these 3 leagues could easily make a complete stop and say, oh, we have too many cases or something like that. Don't forget about those other leagues who I think have pretty much solved their COVID issues and they're going to put pedal to the metal. UFC, NASCAR. We haven't had a testing in MLS since this tournament started. We had a couple of false positives, but no testing positive. English Premier League, zero, nada. So these sports we're playing right now have either figured out how to play the COVID pandemic, because I don't think these other leagues, NBA, NHL, and Major League Baseball, have figured that out yet.
What else is hot right now? What's the action that's pumping up mybookie.ag?
Well, UFC had an event on Wednesday. Now they have another event on Saturday, so that's going to be really big. This weekend, Memorial Weekend, will probably slander down because Tiger's going to be on my couch, so he won't be playing this weekend. But people will still bet that. Baseball's being first pitch thrown on Thursday, so that's a lot of excitement right there. But I would say UFC on Saturdays has not one but two really, really good fights. That will probably be the big key this weekend.
Yeah, we're
Plus
not.
The MLS's back tournament has given huge betting numbers. Because what else is there to bet at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time when you finally put the kids to bed and the wife finally stop yapping and you have some peace time?
Well, I guess if you know soccer, then it makes a lot of sense. I've enjoyed watching them. I know that. I don't know any of the guys I'm watching, but just from a production standpoint, I've enjoyed watching that tournament.
I tell you what I'm going to enjoy if we can get to football season where we can have these normal conversations, Raphael, like you and I used to have on Fridays where we can say, so-and-so is a 17.5-point favorite this weekend. Who are you taking? You remember those that we used to have for the last 3 years?
We'll have NFL talk like that, but I think the next college football talk we'll have is going to be the Army-Navy game. I think that's the only college football game we might see in 2020 is the Army-Navy football game. There won't be no cadets or fans in the stands, but that might be the only college football game we might see in 2020. But we will see the NFL on time, maybe, I don't know, but we will see the NFL.
Mike Buddy, who is the athletic director up at Army in West Point, he used to be, not too long ago, the athletic director at Furman in the Southern Conference. He put out a statement, I think it was last week, right to that point, Raphael. He said, if there is one football game that gets played, we're doing everything in our power to make sure that it is Army-Navy this year.
Yeah, I easily see that game as the only college football. So that might be our national championship game at the same time, the Army-Navy game, so you can tie it into one.
I'd settle for that. If there's one game, hey, you're the champ, man.
It's America's game. There's no question about that.
So if Phil Still is watching, he could just talk about the Army-Navy game because I don't think we're going to talk about anything else. So I know Phil's probably a little nervous because he has to follow me, but he can talk about the Army-Navy game.
That's okay. No, don't say that. We need people to listen to that segment. It's a valuable segment with Phil today. We only get him once a year. All right, so we won't speak to you before Major League Baseball is set to throw the first pitch. Washington and New York, they will play, of course, on ESPN on Thursday evening. That's Max Scherzer, and that is Garrett Cole. Is that a preview of the 2020 World Series?
No, I do not see the two favorites being in the championship, Yankees or Dodgers. Maybe Washington, if they can get the same pitch. If Strasburg pitches like he did last year, then pencil them in as the National League. But it's all going to be on. Let's face it, it's all going to be on pitching this year because the bullpens are going to be weird. The pitching is going to be weird. So it's whoever wins is going to have the best pitching. And I'm telling you, it's not going to be the Yankees or the Dodgers. Keep an eye on for Cleveland because, again, They have to play Kansas City and Detroit a million times this year. They're easily going to be in there.
Yeah, it was you last week who said the World Series champ will come from either the AL or NL Central, right?
Yes, and I'm sticking with that.
Wow. You mentioned
Cubs in the World Series. No, probably not.
Is this the year where we get the Cubs-Red Sox World Series?
No.
No,
it's not.
I'm just saying.
Both teams will be on my couch watching the World Series.
You got a big couch, man.
You do. You have a large couch, and that'll be a nice party. You mentioned the Indians. Per your email you sent to me yesterday afternoon, odds up on mybookie.ag for the next team to officially change their name, and the Indians right now leaders in the clubhouse at 3-1 to do so. But you also have the Chiefs, the Braves, the Florida State Seminoles, and the Chicago Blackhawks listed here.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the Indians. Let's face it, they took away the logo last year with Wahoo. He's no longer around. It's got to be the Indians. Florida State said they're probably not going to do it. Even though the Blackhawks, I've always said they have the best logo in all of sports, I think they should at least have to change the logo. Maybe keep the name, but at least, I mean, if the Redskins can't use that logo, I mean, I would think the Blackhawks is pretty much on the same boat. Maybe not the name-wise. But I think the Cleveland Indians are easily going to be the team. I don't think the Braves are going to get rid of it. Maybe the Braves might change their old logos. Maybe they used to have on different days or Sundays they would bring back the old jerseys and logos. I don't think they're going to be doing that.
I don't think the Braves will change their name. I think they've made it pretty clear that
I don't think they're going to do anything. Maybe
the Tomahawk Chop, I think they'll get rid of. And I don't think Florida State will change their name anytime soon.
How do you police that, though? Like, if you have a section that decides to start doing the chop in the game, what are you going to do? Kick them all out? I mean,
maybe. I don't know. But fortunately, they're not going to have that problem this year.
Well, not this year.
Yeah,
that's I mean, I guess if you're not giving away the little chop things, but
or having people in the stands.
No, I meant in the future. I'm sorry, I should have clarified that. All right, short on time today. So, what are we missing with you? What's on the agenda that we have not discussed?
No, I mean, it's like I said, it's the next couple of weeks. It's going to be crazy with baseball, NBA. Put up a whole bunch of fun NBA prop bets, as I'm sure you saw. People loving that LeBron James revealed that he had COVID.
Yeah.
Even though that would crush the NBA. People jumping all over will someone be 0-8? Because let's face it, I keep on getting phone calls from the Brooklyn Nets to see if I can suit up and play because they're losing players left and right. So NBA is going to be interesting because let's face it, they sound like a bunch of babies because they're combinations in the bubble where they look really, really bad right now with all their complaining about what the bubble is. When no one else is. The MLS has been in the bubble. They're not complaining. English Premier League, they've been in bubbles. No one's complaining. But I guess when you're the NBA, you need to try to sneak out and maybe go see some dancers, but that's about it.
I tell you what, Frank Martin put a lot of them in their place the other day on Twitter. He said, tell those babies to quit whining. There's a lot of people in this world that would like the food they're eating right now.
Exactly.
Good for Frank Martin. He doesn't mince words when he speaks anyway.
No,
Neither does Raphael. If you engage him on Twitter, he'll put you in your place as well. On Twitter at VSI.Sports, mybookie.ag is where you can have some fun. It is fun. It's a great website to be a part of. He's a great person to follow. That's the one thing that we thoroughly – I might not always agree with your takes around here, but I don't know that I have more fun with any other guests we have every week, and we always appreciate it, brother.
College football is going to play a full schedule this year, conference and
There you
non-conference. I'm
go.
jumping on the JV side.
Much better.
Now you guys are friends.
The low country of South Carolina is an optimism-based group of people, okay? You gotta be optimistic to fit in around here.
They're playing a full schedule, and we're going to have an extended college football championship as well.
Good. 16-team playoff.
You heard it here first.
Raphael, have a great weekend. Thank you so much for accommodating our schedule today. We'll be back on track next Friday.
You too, tell Phil I said hi.
You got
Will
it.
do.
I'll do it. There you go. Raphael Esparza on Twitter again at VSI.Sports. It's lunch, and guess what? Dinner comes up later, too. DB'sCheesesteaks.com for the full menu. Might want to order twice today. They deliver the finest, tastiest cheesesteak in town. Voted by you, Charleston's Choice #1. The Buffalo Chicken Cheesesteak is my favorite. Don't forget the Boardwalk fries, sandwiches for the kids, hot dogs, cheeseburgers. They're all there in Avondale and West Ashley. DB'sCheesesteaks.com. All right, time for a break. When we return, Phil Steele will join us here on the JB and Goldwater Show.
DB's Cheesesteaks, the tastiest, juiciest, and now award-winning cheesesteaks in the Low Country. DB's Cheesesteaks delivers, and not just in quality. Download DoorDash, Uber Eats, or your delivery app of choice and have it dropped off at your doorstep. Original chicken, buffalo chicken, even pizza cheesesteaks, not to mention incredible cheeseburgers, massive hot dogs, and dynamite hoagies. It's all there for you and your family. DB's Cheesesteaks in West Ashley. DB'sCheesesteaks.com.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Low Country. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit stonoferrygolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. stonoferrygolf.com.
The JB and Goldwater Show.
That's us. Because we play this.
And there are these guys in a band on stage bouncing on trampolines, and one of them is playing a vacuum cleaner on his face. It was the greatest thing I'd ever seen. This band was going for it as hard as they could. I've never seen anything like it. And I said to the bartender, I was like, who is this band? Oh, this is a band from New Hampshire called Fish.
All right, 12:30. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show. Friday afternoon. It's warm in the Low Country, but it's not raining, which is really what I look at every day around here. Darren Goldwater, Jamie Bradford here until 2 o'clock this afternoon. Thank you to Rafael Esparza joining us in Las Vegas in that last segment. Michael Flint, former Gamecock wide receiver, coming up at 1:30 today as part of our 8-part series previewing the Gamecocks position groups. But first, he previews the entire country in college football. It's the one and the only Phil Steele. We've all looked at his magazines pretty much the entirety of our lives, and we're lucky enough to have him join us today. Phil, good afternoon, brother. How are you?
You know, I am doing fine. How about you gentlemen this afternoon?
Doing great.
Well, you know, so I'm an optimist, and I know you're an optimist. So we can combine today to share our optimism that there will be a college football season. Would you agree with that?
You know, I'll tell you this. I am a pessimist, but I am optimistic. We are playing football this year in the fall, my friend.
Yes, sir.
Very optimistic.
I am too. I'm very optimistic about that. And so, we thank you so much. PhilSteele.com. It's the best $20 you can spend. They'll ship it right to your doorstep, and you can spend the next couple of weeks getting ready for football. How long does it take you to put this magazine together?
Normally it takes 6 full months. But this year it took 8 months because we had, the state of Ohio got shut down. So I was just in here in an empty office by myself for a couple of months toiling away on the magazine, and there was no way we were going to get it out at the end of May. So we ended up putting it out in July. But we start the Sunday after Thanksgiving when some team season is complete, and then we finished up this year July the 8th. So it took almost 8 full months.
Well, Phil, if God help us if this ever happens again, you're always welcome to come down to the Low Country of South Carolina. We'll put you up. You can do everything down here, brother.
I appreciate that.
You got it. And you'll get to know the Gamecocks and the Tigers while you do it. We'll start there with South Carolina coming off a 4-8 season and looking to get back to bowl eligibility. This is year number 5 under Will Muschamp, as you know quite well. When you spoke with him, what was the most important takeaway that you got from Coach Muschamp in his opinion of the 2020 football season?
He does feel optimistic about it. I think the unit he felt best about was the offensive line. And one thing I threw at him was, Coach, you got to stay healthier. I mean, these last 2 years, they have been injury-plagued. And they did bring in a new strength and conditioning coach this year. So hopefully that makes a big-time difference. Because if they can stay healthier, the personnel is there. And, I mean, now if the offensive line is as good as Coach Muschamp feels, and he feels it's the best offensive line since he's been there, then I think the quarterback play will improve. And whether it's Ryan Helinski or Colin Hill, I think they're in good shape there. The running backs look good with Zaquandre Wright, Marshawn Lloyd. There's talent at the receiver position. So if the offensive line's as good as he thinks it is, I think the offense is going to surprise some folks this year.
How would you pair that offense if they can put points on the board, which obviously they needed to do last year to get to bowl eligibility, did not do so in a couple of those games? How would you pair that with the defense that returns for South Carolina?
I would think that, well, I do think South Carolina is a bowl team this year. I mean, they've got 6 starters back on defense. You look at the individual units, I've got the defensive line rated number 29. The linebackers just made it in my top group at number 55 and the DBs at number 40. So all 3 units do rank up there in the top units. Special teams are solid. South Carolina actually ranks in my top units in all 8 position categories. So it's a good South Carolina team. And if the offense is, like we just talked about, improved, I think that takes some of the load off the defense that they had to face last year. Of course, some games when you're playing Florida and you got a guy running down the field holding your defender all the way down the field, and holding call not called. I asked Coach Muschamp about that. I'm like, what'd they tell you about that? And he's like, they didn't tell me a damn thing about that play. And I'm like, how is that not holding?
I'm glad you saw what everybody else saw. Except for Florida fans, nobody in Gainesville happened to see that. The rest of us
no. Yeah, and normally they explain something to a coach like that. So I always ask a coach when I see a strange play, I'm like, what they explain? He's like, nothing. They didn't tell me anything about that play.
While we're talking about the SEC, we'll circle back to the Gamecocks, I'm sure, at some point. But the thing that jumps out at me, you got Texas A&M nudging up on Alabama there, huh? I mean, you're pretty high on Texas A&M.
I am, and it goes back to my conversation with Coach Fisher last year, going over the team with him. I like the talent they had on the team, but one thing that stood out to me, they didn't have any seniors on last year's squad. It was a young team. And the second thing that stood out to me was the schedule. I'm like, Coach, you take a look at your schedule this year? And as it turns out, Texas A&M took on 3 teams that were ranked number 1 in the country when they played them. Clemson was number 1, Bama was number 1, LSU was number 1. They also took on the number 4 and the 8 team. Not a surprise, a young team lost 5 games against top 10 teams. Well, this year, they've got 17 returning starters coming back. Kellen Mond, a quarterback, a deeper set of running backs. Remember last year they lost their top running back, and you're wondering who's going to even be that feature. They're deeper there. The offensive line, defensive line, both rank in my top 15. And when you look at their schedule, they may play one top 10 team this year. They've got my number 66 rated schedule. So much more experienced team. And I told Coach Fisher last year, I said, Coach, I'm going to put you on the cover of my national magazine next year. And here it is next year, and I think they have that possibility. They are my number 1 surprise team in the country, and I think if anybody's going to come out of the outside of the top 10 and actually contend or get to the playoff, Texas A&M is my choice.
The way that the schedule is now, I can't remember. Does A&M play Alabama and Tuscaloosa?
That's the one thing. But LSU had to do that last year as well, remember. LSU had to play in at Tuscaloosa, and they still got to the playoff doing that. So that is their toughest game on the schedule and possibly the only top 10 team they play all year.
All right, so you've got A&M ahead of LSU. Obviously, I think, was it 14 or something players went to the NFL draft. Lose a ton of starters. We know they're talented, though, Phil. Everybody understands that. But what is the bigger loss for LSU? Is it on the field or is it off the field with Joe Brady?
Oh, that's a heck of a question because, I mean, what Brady did with Joe Burrow last year. Now, Joe Burrow was a guy who I thought really came on in the second half of 2018, so it's not like he was a pure Joe Brady happening there. He really came on. In fact, I picked him as my dark horse Heisman contender in an ESPN article over the summer. I think he was at 200-1 odds, and he ended up winning it. So I think that loss right there is probably the biggest loss. I'm going to say Joe Burrow, but losing Brady is tough too because we hadn't seen an LSU offense like that, had we, in the previous years? I mean, 48.4 points per game. Those guys were unstoppable last year.
I don't know. I'd ever seen an offense like that, period, in college football.
Yeah, true.
Especially,
there might not have been a team like LSU last year. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, Jamie just took the words right out of my mouth. That offense and those numbers that Burrow in particular put up.
And in this league where you play defense in the SEC, there's no. So let's stick with the theme of the SEC West real quick. Darren and I talked maybe a couple of weeks ago at length about Mississippi State. Obviously, Mike Leach is the head coach, but KJ Costello is now the quarterback. We know that he can play. So this is a team that could maybe beat one or two teams they're not supposed to beat this year, Phil, in my opinion, but they also lose a couple of games they might not. They might be supposed to win simply because it is a new system over there, and you do have to play defense in this league, and Mike Leach's teams generally don't do that.
Yeah, and well, they did a couple years ago when Grinch was the defense coordinator. Remember, I think it was go back to like 2018. They only allowed 23 points per game, so they played good defense then. But here's the thing I look at when I look at this. It's a tough year for the Switch because their personnel was geared to the run game. Running quarterback, big offensive line. It was all the run game, and that's not just with Moorhead. That was even previously with Mullen. They were based on a running quarterback, basically. Now you're completely switching schemes. Look what happened at Arkansas. Arkansas had Brett Bielema, big offensive line, run game. Then they tried to switch to the pass offense. They had 2 pretty tough years because it's a big-time retooling. And you go back to when Mike Leach stepped in at Washington State. His first year, 3-9. Second year, they did get to a bowl at 6-7. Then 3-9 the third year. So it took a while for a system to take place. And toss in the fact of the lack of spring practices this year. I think that's going to really set this team behind. I look at the 2 coaching changes at the Mississippi schools, and I think Lane Kiffin steps into a much better situation. They had a lot of talented freshmen playing last year, not drastic schemes offensively or defensively, whereas Mississippi State is using drastic schemes, changes, offensively, defensively, without the benefit of spring practices, and probably without the correct personnel maybe to run the new offense.
Phil Steele joining us at 12:39 on this Friday afternoon. All right, let's go back across the conference, and then we'll get out of the SEC and go enjoy some other football, probably in the ACC, which this state does represent quite well in Clemson. When I look at the East personally, I see three tiers of teams. I see Florida, Georgia. I see the middle, which is Tennessee, Kentucky, South Carolina. And then I see the distant third, no offense to Missouri and Vanderbilt. I just don't know that those guys have enough to really compete this year. South Carolina, you mentioned, is going to be better and should be in a bowl game this year. But so is Kentucky and Tennessee. That's a very interesting – how improved is the East?
Both Tennessee and Kentucky are vastly improved. I'll go back to talking to Coach Pruitt his first year there. Now, remember, he had come from Alabama and Georgia in the previous two coaching stops, and he was not enamored with the talent he inherited at Tennessee. And talking to him, you could tell that they were in for a rough season. What did they lose? About 7 games that year by 25 points or more. Talking to him this year, they go 2-3 deep at Cal. He has got this almost to the point he wants it to at Tennessee. But I asked him point blank. I said, Coach, you're playing Oklahoma, you're playing Alabama, you're playing Florida, you're playing Georgia. Can you play with the big boys? And he said, there's not a team on the schedule we can't beat this year. So they are a more confident team. That 6-game winning streak helps them. 17 returning starters. This year's Tennessee team would have beat his first-year Tennessee team from 2018 probably by 21, 24 points. It's a very good Tennessee. And with Kentucky, we all expected a step back with Kentucky last year. Let's face it, they lost all those guys in the NFL, 4 returning starters on offense, 4 on defense. They're playing a wide receiver at quarterback the second half of the year. Eddie Grand did a phenomenal job with that offense. Now, they do lose their dynamic playmaker from down the stretch, which, Lynn Bowden was a dangerous runner. Bowden's first 4 starts last year, they averaged 16.5 points per game. His last 4 starts, 42.5 points per game. I don't think they'll be at the latter part, the 42.5, because his running ability was unstoppable. But the coaches are really high on Terry Wilson as a passing quarterback, and you'll see a more balanced Kentucky offense. And defensively, this team's a lot better than they were heading into last year. Last year, they lost all those star players to the NFL draft, and this year they've got a lot of the star players back. Defensive line, linebacker, defensive back, they are loaded. So this is a much better Kentucky defense and a much better team overall. They go from number 105 on my experience chart all the way up to number 39 this year. Wow. All three, I agree with you. Those 3 teams are very high-level, middle-of-the-road East teams.
Phil Steele's with us. You can find everything you want. Phil Steele's magazine. It's philsteele.com. And just order that magazine. It's the greatest one every single year. You've got Georgia ahead of Florida in the East. Is Newsome the difference there, and how good can Newsome be?
I think Jamie Newman can be outstanding. Yeah, as long as he's got the receivers, which he does. I mean, Georgia last year had a young receiving corps, but they were talented. Now they're experienced and talented. And he had some receivers at Wake Forest last year who were phenomenal. If you watch Wake Forest's first 8 games last year, Jamie Newman was almost unstoppable, especially in the fourth quarter. And then he lost his top 2 receivers to injury. They also lost their top 2 linebackers, but that's another case. But I think with Newman, he's got the size you want at 6'4", 230. He'll remind you a little bit of Cam Newton because he's a big guy that can run. He's also a very dangerous passer. So I think Newman beats out Daniel for the job. He's got a good supporting cast. Probably my biggest question, it's a question you never have with Georgia, which is the offensive line. They had Pittman there as the offensive line coach for years. They've didn't matter how many returning starters, they've always done well. That's probably the one question I have on the team is how good will they be up front. But defensively, they may have the best defense in the country. I'm talking about my number 5 rated D-line, number 1 set of linebackers, number 4 DBs. And when you got a defense like that, you're going to win a lot of games. Now, Florida's got the better schedule, which is why they're probably going to be picked first in the East by many. I've seen them picked first in the East because Georgia has to play at Alabama. Florida gets LSU at home. That's a completely different animal. And Florida only has 3 SEC road games, whereas Georgia only has 3 SEC home games. But I still went with Georgia. I'm a defensive guy, and I like Jamie Newman.
In the ACC, Phil, we know it's Clemson and everybody else, but how much has that gap shrunk?
Massively, because last year, guys, all right, I'm going to throw this question out to you. Who was the number 2 team in the ACC last year?
Oh, take your pick.
Yeah, I mean, it was Clemson, the Grand Canyon, and then the rest of the ACC. In fact, in the front of the magazine, I listed the ACC as the 6th best conference in college football last year behind the American. I thought the American had much better depth, and I'm still scratching my head over who the second best team in the ACC was last year. That's not the case this year. In fact, the most improved division in college football is the Coastal. I'm starting with North Carolina. North Carolina has got 17 returning starters this year, led by Sam Howell at quarterback, a deep core of running backs. Mac Brown's doing a phenomenal job there. And it's not like Fedora was a poor coach. Fedora had good personnel his last 2 years. They just didn't catch a break. He went 3-9, 3-9. Mac Brown took care of that, and they go from number 103 on my experience chart up to number 30. They're probably the pick to win that division. But how about Miami? Miami's problem last year was quarterback play. I mean, we saw that week in and week out. They had in De'Ara King from Houston. Now, you guys have seen him play. Mm-hmm. He's dynamic, running, throwing. I think he's a huge upgrade at the quarterback position. Veteran offensive line, good skill personnel. And they had Gregory Rousseau, who emerged as a freshman last year, 15.5 sacks. They had Quincy Roche to the unit, 13 sacks at Temple. He was the American Conference Defensive Player of the Year. That's a great D-line. They are loaded this year. They're my number one most improved team in the country. And how about Virginia Tech? They're number 5 on my experience chart, 18 returning starters. Last year, Hendon Hooker, their quarterback, when he took over, they had been averaging 19 points per game against Power 5 teams. Once he took over, 34 points per game. So they were a much better offense. Defensively, 2 years ago when I'm talking to Bud Foster, the defensive coordinator, I'm like, wow, Coach, you are so young and so thin. Just don't get anybody injured. And then he lost like 3 of his top players. Virginia Tech gave up like 31 points per game 2 years ago. They got improved last year, and now new defensive coordinator, Justin Hamilton, who was there last year, knows the system, has 10 returning starters to work with. They're going to have a dynamic defense. And speaking of defense, how about the Pitt Panthers? They had 3 guys, defensive end Patrick Jones, nose tackle Jalen Twyman, strong safety Paris Ford. Those guys could have all gone to the NFL. They all opted to return for their senior seasons. Last year, they lost Rashad Weaver, their top defensive lineman, prior to the year, Kashawn Camp at defensive tackle prior to the year. Those guys are back. Along with them, they may have one of the best defenses. So I think those 4 teams right there really show the improvement in the Coastal Division this year. But I still will say Clemson, I mean, you can't go from a Grand Canyon to 0 gap. There still is a gap there. Clemson's the best team in the ACC, and I know you're shocked at that.
No. Yeah, I mean, really out on a limb there. No doubt about that. Well, you've got Florida State right behind the Tigers. Clemson does go this year to Tallahassee.
Now, that gap's a little bit bigger. Okay. I do think Mike Norvell will do a good job in his first year. And if you follow Mike Norvell, at Memphis, you know that he does well when he's got the great skill people. And he's got great skill people. Jashawn Corbin, Kalen LeBourne, DJ Matthews, Scary Terry, a receiver. So that offense will be potent. Defensively, how about Marvin Wilson turning down the NFL? That guy would have been probably a top 10 pick. He's back to key the nose tackle position. They're loaded on defense, but he had very few spring practices with the team. That's tough for a first-year head coach. You got to come in and learn the players both offensively and defensively. And Florida State needed a little bit of work. So there's still that gap there. I think Louisville could be a threat for second place in the Atlantic. And then my dark horse in the Atlantic is NC State. You know, one of my favorite sections in the magazine is the stock market indicator. Mm-hmm. This is clearly one of those bounce-back teams. I mean, they had 9 wins each of the previous 2 years, 5 straight bowls. Had an off year last year, now a more veteran team. NC State's going to bounce back. They're my number 4 most improved team. But in the Atlantic, it's still Clemson and then a pretty good-sized gap.
How about the Tigers? The difference between this year's Clemson team and last year's Clemson team, if the rest of the ACC is, in fact, closing the gap massively, as you said, how far ahead are the Tigers this year from where they were last year?
I don't know if Clemson's ahead of last year, but they're close. I mean, defensively, last year's defensive line was inexperienced. This year they're experienced. They had in a Brian Breezy, a true freshman, all that talent they have. They have my best defensive line in the country. My biggest concern on defense, guys, is Isaiah Simmons. I mean, that guy, you could put him anywhere on the field, and he was a dynamic playmaker on the defensive side of the ball. He's gone. They do lose some other key players, but I still think that Venables will field a very strong defense, one of the tops in the country. Offensively, the 2 biggest questions I have would be wide receiver depth. I mean, there's talent there with Rodgers, Nagata, but I think losing Ross hurts him a little bit because they don't really go 3 deep in talented receivers. And last year's receiving core was one of the best in the country. Now they lose a couple of those key players. So wide receiver depth is a question, and then the offensive line. 4 key starters walk out the door on the offensive line. Jackson Carman's back. They will field a good group, but you wonder a little bit about the inexperience on the offensive line. So the gap is closer. I don't know if this year's Clemson team is as strong as last year's Clemson team, but neither is anybody else at the top of the country. I mean, LSU's not out there this year, and I think you could poke holes in some positions at Ohio State. You could poke holes in some positions at Alabama, and same thing at Oklahoma.
All right, a couple minutes left with you, so we'll take a quick drive around the country and then let you get on to the next one. I don't even understand how you do this every day, all day long. But we'll take a quick drive around the country for our folks here, and then we'll let you go. In the Big 12, anybody who has a shot at knocking off Oklahoma?
Yeah, 2 teams in particular. And I know everybody was talking about Sam Ehlinger last year going, Texas is back. And guess what? They weren't. They only had 8 returning starters last year. They were inexperienced. They suffered a myriad of injuries on the defensive side of the ball. They got 9 starters back on defense, 7 on offense. It's a much more veteran team. Remember last year they had Keontae Ingram at running back, and they had to bring the quarterback in, Rashawn Johnson. And they really didn't have anything after that. They're much better depth at running back position this year. The offensive line looks solid, and defensively, as mentioned, 9 starters are back. I think they're a team that could surprise, and with limited or with conference play being the key factor there, that Oklahoma game is big. And then how about Oklahoma State? Mike Gundy got himself a Christmas present, and when both Chuba Hubbard and Tylan Wallace turned down the NFL and opted to return, he had a freshman quarterback in Spencer Sanders who got injured after 8 games. He's back now as a sophomore. That's a pretty dynamic trio that they have. And last year's Oklahoma State defense was a concern to me heading into the year. They only had 4 returning starters. This year they have 10 returning starters, only lose 6 lettermen. The defense will have a lot more bite. So I think Oklahoma State, Texas are your legitimate contenders to Oklahoma in the Big 12.
How about just from a quarterback standpoint? I know we just jumped away from Clemson, but as we kind of tie the whole conversation over towards the Big Ten a little bit, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, where do you stand on that conversation?
If I'm an NFL guy and I got the number 1 pick in next year's draft, I'm taking Trevor Lawrence, and that's pretty easy. It's a great pick. But I'll say this. In the front of the magazine, I picked Trevor Lawrence for my first-team All-American, but I picked Fields for winning the Heisman because Fields will probably have more big games like Penn State, Michigan, things like that, which will get the national attention. And I do think Ohio State has got the team to contend for the national title once again this year. My question mark for Justin Fields heading into last year, guys, was actually can he read a defense? But I guess when you throw 41 touchdown passes and have 3 interceptions, I think he answered that question for me. And he's got a veteran offensive line. Myers, Davis, Munford all turned down the NFL draft, so you got to love that. I think Justin Fields has a big year this year. I would take Trevor Lawrence, number 1 pick in the draft. I picked Fields to win the Heisman, and Lawrence, number 1 first-team All-American.
How deep is the Big Ten?
I would say Penn State's Ohio State's biggest challenger this year. If there's a team that can stand up to Penn State or to Ohio State talent-wise, it would be Penn State. And I've watched Coach Franklin build this team on a yearly basis. This is the deepest one he's put on. And you could argue last year's Penn State team was young, maybe arrived a year early, getting 8-0 and number 5 in the country. This year's team is loaded. They go 3 deep everywhere. Micah Parsons on defense, a dynamic defensive line, good secondary. Sean Clifford back at QB. Penn State gets Ohio State at home. I think that's the one game Ohio State's got to worry about in Big Ten play.
Oh, you're making me very happy, Phil. I'm a Penn State grad. I was there in the LeVar Arrington days, though, so not the brightest of national championship type days at Penn State, but at least we saw some talent.
Let me tell you a quick story about like the offensive line with Penn State. That first year I went over with Coach Franklin, they had like 6 guys that could play, and one of them was a former walk-on. Now they go 3 deep, legitimate 3 deep, and highly recruited guys. So remarkable job building it if you're a Penn State fan.
All right, and not to forget our friends on the West Coast. Is there a playoff, I don't want to say contender, is there a team in the Pac-12 that you feel good about their chances of making the college football playoff?
I think it's going to be tough based on the schedules that they play, and but I think, and plus the fact that they're not going to be able to play non-conference games this year. They're only playing conference games, so everybody's reaction will be, well, what have you done against non-conference? We haven't seen anything. So it's a tough year for them to make that jump. But there are 2 legitimate teams in the Pac-12. going over I think I talked to almost every Pac-12 coach, and Oregon's roster. You think of Oregon, you think of high-flying, fast offenses and tricky things. No, they're a physical football team under Cristobal. Their defensive line, I rate number 6 in the country. Linebackers number 13. DBs number 1. They have one of the better defenses in the country, which is atypical for Oregon, but very typical for Mario Cristobal. Question marks are on the offensive line at quarterback, but they're still good in those areas. And then USC. And I know everybody's like, oh, USC, they're never going to get there. They lose too many games. But look at a couple of their losses last year, guys. The second game, or the third game of the season, they had to start Keaton Slovis. First road start at BYU. They lost that game in overtime. And then their next road game was at Washington. It was their third-string quarterback, first road start. First road start's very tough for a quarterback. And they had 3 turnovers in the red zone in that game, or could have made that a much better game. They lost to Notre Dame by 3. A lot of close losses. This is clearly Clay Helton's best team. Slovis at QB. Dynamic running backs, great personnel, receiver, offensive line's veteran, defense line's good. Keep your eyes on USC. They could surprise some folks this year.
And Oregon will welcome the Trojans to town. Huge loss, though, as you mentioned a minute ago, with the scheduling problems now in the Pac-12. Oregon not being able to host Ohio State is just a huge hit for their chances at the college football playoff. Phil Steele on Twitter. Well, come on. If you don't follow Phil Steele on Twitter, I don't need to. It's at Phil Steele 042. But, I mean, I don't really know why I need to give that away. Everybody follows Phil on Twitter. PhilSteele.com. The Order, the magazine, is the most in-depth preseason college football magazine the world has ever seen. And we thank you so much for your extended time with us today, Phil. We can't wait for football season. Wonderful, wonderful information for us and our listeners. And enjoy the fall. And hopefully you'll get some sleep at some point in time between now and then.
Yeah, this is my fun time of year, guys. I just do a bunch of radio shows talking football all day long, and so it's definitely a fun time of year. Great talking football with you guys, and let's talk again during a football season, which is playing this fall, huh?
You got
definitely.
I love it.
Yep,
I love it.
We'll reach out.
We'll reach out.
We'll talk to you this year for sure.
Thank you, Phil.
All right, sounds good, guys.
Take care. There you go, Phil Steele, the great Phil Steele, joining us here on the JB and Goldwater Show, 12:56 on this Friday afternoon. 25 minutes. With the man himself. Really good stuff. You could tell he does this a lot. I mean, his answers are put together, man. There's no hums, uhs, or nothing.
Chris, I think Chris is the guy who handles kind of a lot of his media, and he'll put out there kind of the schedule of the day. Now, Phil doesn't have a 1 o'clock today, which is probably, I don't know, a breath of fresh air for him, but he does 10, 20 shows like a day and just sits wherever he sits and rattles all this stuff off, and he's doing it around the country. And you can tell, look, it doesn't just take time to put this thing together. He knows it. He ingests all of this information because he can go on with us now and then in an hour go on in L.A. and talk to Pac-12 the entire time, like we talk mostly East Coast stuff the entire time.
Well, you know what
the guy's a legend.
You know what the best thing about what he does is? Talks to the coaches.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of know-it-alls out there who don't even talk to the coaches. I know who a couple of them are. And some of the stuff they've regurgitated to me, I'm like, have you even talked to Will Muschamp or Dabo Swint? Do you even know who's on the team? But not Phil Steele.
Nope.
And that's why we had him, and we're very grateful for that.
And that's why it's great, because he can say, you know, in talking with Pruitt at Tennessee and in talking with Franklin at Penn State and talking with Muschamp, I mean,
no
look,
question.
If you want to have the best preview magazine, then you got to get your information. So you have to go to the source, and he does.
He does. No question. That's why we went to the source and him. All right, hour 1 in the books on the JB and Goldwater Show. Michael Flint, he'll be up at 1:30 today, and we'll preview the Gamecocks defensive line that Phil touched on just a little bit ago. Features a couple 5-stars. We'll tell you about that if you didn't know. Plus, the Redskins, we'll get into that when we come back. More football, and we'll dabble more football news, but we'll also dabble in the NCAA's 2020 guidelines that were released yesterday. So a lot ahead. We'll lead off hour 2 as we always do with the national anthem presented by Patriots Point. So hang tight. We'll be right back.
Honey Baked Ham in Somerville and in Mount Pleasant is your home for catering and lunch. Honey Baked Somerville, owned by former Gamecock right-hander Mike Cisco, is just off the interstate, and they are ready to cater to your next business or family meal. Plus, drop in for an incredible sandwiches daily for lunch. The Mount Pleasant location is at the foot of the Ravenel Bridge and always ready to serve and cater to your next meals as well. Plus, delivery is available. Honeybake.com to find your menu today.
What's up, guys? It's JB. Obviously, things have been kind of crazy with the coronavirus taking over our lives. We're stuck inside with family, finding ways to be creative and probably tapping the liquor cabinet a little bit. If you don't have Patrick Davis's Whiskey Jam in yours, put on your mask and gloves and head to Bottles or Burris liquor stores here in Charleston. The Blackberry is my personal favorite on the rocks, but the original Whiskey Jam is Patrick's. So either way, you're winning with Whiskey Jam. WhiskeyJam.com, PatrickDavis.com.
DB's Cheesesteaks, the tastiest, juiciest, and now award-winning cheesesteaks in the Low Country. DB's Cheesesteaks delivers, and not just in quality. Download DoorDash, Uber Eats, or your delivery app of choice and have it dropped off at your doorstep. Original chicken, buffalo chicken, even pizza cheesesteaks, not to mention incredible cheeseburgers, massive hot dogs, and dynamite hoagies. It's all there for you and your family. DB's Cheesesteaks in West Ashley. dbscheesesteaks.com.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon. Hi, I'm Chris Half, Public Information Officer at the Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum. We're home of the mighty USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, Clamagore, and Vietnam experience. And we're a proud partner of the JB and Goldwater Show. We invite you and your family to come see us and enjoy a day on Charleston Harbor. Visit patriotspoint.org for more information. And now, it is my honor to present the National Anthem.
Live, loud, and online.
1:02 p.m., final hour of the afternoon, final hour of the work week here on the JB and Goldwater Show on this July the 17th. Welcome back, Darren Goldwater, Jamie Bradford, Michael Flint still ahead at 1:30. You can follow us on social media at JB and Goldwater, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You can also watch us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter by typing in JB and Goldwater. And, of course, you can listen every day live on the Podbean app. And all of that is available after the show in podcast form, jbandgoldwatershow.com for much more information on our program. Again, thanks to Phil Steele for that 25 minutes we spent in hour number one here. One interesting note, and hopefully you've ordered the magazine, but an interesting note that we did not get into with Phil because he was so high on Texas A&M. He's got the Aggies in his preseason top 40 at number 5, behind Oklahoma, Alabama at 3, Clemson at 2, and Ohio State at number 1. So he's got the Aggies all the way up at number 5. That's ahead of the Georgia Bulldogs. And you Gamecock fans, if you do your math and somehow some way this year you're able to still tie in the rivalry game to Clemson, that means that at this point in time, 3 of the top 6 teams in the country are on your schedule and 4 of the top 10 and 5 of the top 11 if you bring Florida and LSU into the mix because they're ranked 10th and 11th, respectively.
And like Phil said, A&M's schedule, meanwhile, when they played 3 number 1 teams at the time last year, this year his schedule for A&M ranks down below 50 this year. So for Carolina, it's like a usual spot for you guys.
Well,
I mean, you're generally sitting there looking at one of the toughest schedules in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. Last year, as we went into 2019, and you had Alabama at home, you had Clemson at home, and you were on the road in Athens. There was 3 preseason top 5 teams on that schedule, and when South Carolina played all of them, they were all top 5 at the time. Well, a lot of folks looked ahead to 2020 and said, well, even with the trip to LSU this year, this should be a little bit of an easier schedule. Not so fast, my friends, as Lee Corso might say, because you've got Clemson on the road this year. You do have A&M and Georgia both at home. So 2 of those 3 that are in the top 6, according to Phil Steele, will be in Williams-Brice Stadium, if that Clemson game is played. But you also travel to number 10 and 11, which is Florida and LSU. Name another team in the country that has that right now collectively on their schedule. So, and then you've got improved Tennessee and you've got improved Kentucky. Tennessee waxed you in Knoxville. In Kentucky last year, although you ended a 5-game losing streak against those guys, you got to go to Lexington this season. So the season, South Carolina better be improved. I think they will be. But they better be vastly improved if they want to win a few of these. I mean, you think, hold on. If you have a 10-game schedule, 10, that means conference games and then maybe Clemson.
Like the 8-2 scenario they're tossing around.
If they're tossing around this 8-2 model, that means half of them are against top 11 teams.
I don't know what it's like to be a Gamecock fan, and I'm okay with not understanding what that's like because it's a tough way to go.
I mean, I didn't intend to open hour 2 with much more South Carolina football because we're going to finish hour 2 with the Gamecocks, but yeah, I mean, it's noteworthy, certainly, that is just brutal.
Yep.
For the Gamecocks. All right, real quick, speaking of brutal, it's been that way for Tiger Woods this afternoon at the Memorial, presented by Nationwide at Muirfield Village Golf Club up in Dublin, Ohio, where I know he bogeyed earlier. Is he still at 5 over? I think he is still at 5 over. So as of he's not going to make the cut into the weekend, will Tiger Woods, who started out well yesterday, but it has been very unkind this afternoon in round number 2. Tiger Woods is really struggling. So is Dustin Johnson, by the way, the South Carolina native and Gamecock fan, is at 8 over par. So it's a couple of notables in the tournament just really struggling. Tiger actually has climbed. He's back to 3 over, so only a shot behind the projected cut, which is 2 over par at Muirfield. So, yeah, who knows? We'll see if he can make a little bit of a run here to try to get to the weekend. He needs to play golf. We know about that. But he's going to have to birdie on 18 to get to the cut line, or that cut line is going to have to drop this afternoon to get him into the weekend. So it's going to be by the skin of his teeth, Darren, if he's able to escape going home early.
One final college note before we jump over to the Washington side of things. The CAA yesterday announced that they will be suspending fall sports, but did give the option to teams to basically be independent, pursue your own schedule. JMU is still open to that.
So is Elon.
Many of the CAA schools are now independently, however, announcing that they're pushing back. But at the moment, JMU, which is typically a powerhouse, they are going to, at least at that level, they are going to still try and field a team.
Yeah, Elon, I think, is actually on the Citadel schedule, and they've announced they're going to try to move forward with an independent schedule. So we'll see what happens with those guys. But just another league, smaller league, of course, than the Power 5.
Yeah, it's FCS.
Announcing that that this season they will not be playing football. Elon is actually the opening game for the Citadel this year, per our friend Jeff Hartzell with the Post and Courier. So they do plan to be at Johnson-Hagan Stadium on September the 5th. How about this note real quick in college football? This is really cool, and this is something that, Darren, I think you'll enjoy a lot. There is a Division III program that is making the jump to D1. It is official now. After being controversially – this is a release from footballscoop.com. After controversially being kicked out of their Division III league for being too successful in May of 2019, St. Thomas is in D1 football. Now, they will be a part of the Patriot League. The Patriot League,
Pioneer.
The Pioneer League, which is an FCS non-scholarship league. I didn't even realize that. How does that work?
It works very much like the Ivies work. They don't give athletic scholarships, but you can still figure out ways.
So they have an endowment, essentially.
Basically. Okay. And what this will allow St. Thomas to do, they will be immediately successful at the FCS level because there is no mincing words in that report. It is true. They were kicked out of their league because they were too successful. And it's funny. I was in Minneapolis not long after this process started last year, and there was a ton of buzz already saying, look, they're doing everything they can to go D1, and it's never happened before where a D3 jumps to D1, so they weren't certain if it would be possible. But what ended up happening, there isn't D2 that's really around there that makes sense for them based on their athletic program. So they were granted a waiver, and they're the first team to jump from D3 to D1.
Wow. Fantastic. Congratulations to them. Glenn Caruso is the coach. He has 126-21 in his career. That includes
pretty good.
2 appearances in the D3 National Championship game, 2012 and 2015. Hopefully we'll have a national championship at the Power 5 level this year, or at the FBS level, we should just say. We'll see. Of course, if that is to take place, that means folks will need to adhere to the guidelines that have been released yesterday by the NCAA and the Power 5 cohesively and collectively. We talked about a lot of this a little while ago, but one of the things we did not get to is the conditions that would result in a school discontinuing competition and or completing their season. So there's a few conditions that they listed in this report, Darren. I'm going to read them. Lack of ability to isolate new positive cases or quarantine high-contact risk cases on campus. The inability to perform weekly testing. Number 3, and this is an important note, campus-wide or local community test rates that are considered unsafe by local public health officials. Number 4, inability to perform adequate contact tracing. And number 5, local public health officials state that there is an inability for the hospital infrastructure to accommodate a surge in COVID-related hospitalizations. Now, number 3 and 5 are what the athletics directors and presidents at all of these schools are really focused on because they feel pretty comfortable about the protocols that are on their campuses right now. They've been really good. We just found out, I think it was yesterday, Josh Kendall with the Athletics said, per some sources in Columbia who spoke on the condition of anonymity, that there's not been one positive test in Columbia with the Gamecocks in over 3 weeks. So that's great news. Clemson's, of course, have gone way down. The large majority of people are handling this quite well on their campuses. But what we're finding, and this is why, like last Saturday on Marty and McGee, you heard Greg Sankey with the commissioner of the Southeastern Conference essentially pleading to the public to do your part, wear your mask, wash your hands, socially distance, and the whole nine yards. Because they can't control number 3 and 5. They can't control if campus-wide or local community test rates are considered unsafe by public health officials. That is for public health officials to determine, and them only. And they can't control number 5, which is when local public health officials would state that there's an inability for the hospital infrastructure to accommodate the surge, if there is a surge in these local communities. So what they're saying is, look, we can control 1, 2, and 4. We can't control 3 and 5. So if these spike and they say, look, we got a problem here, we have to shut down because of you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what they're hoping is they can control their own football teams and other athletic teams to not contribute to these issues in their communities. And I do think that the large majority, and I mean large, like 99% of the majority of these college athletes, I think they will adhere to the majority of these, if not all, of these protocols.
The large majority will.
I think they will. These kids want to play football, Darren. They want to play volleyball. They want to swim. They want to do what they're there to do.
The problem isn't the large majority, though.
No,
the problem is
the minority.
It's the one dude who just can't resist going out to grab that slice of pizza and then, she's cute. I'm going to go grab a beer at that bar, and then boom. And then your bubble bursts.
Absolutely. Or vice versa. Girlfriend comes over.
Yes.
She's done the same thing, and it brings it right into your apartment in the whole 9 yards. So that is where these ADs, and I understand it from that perspective of we're doing our part. All you have to do is look at even some of these schools that have paused their workouts because of 7 or 8 COVID tests that have turned up positive and things like that. That's still not 100. It's not 90, it's not 80, it's not 50. It's not an overwhelming number. They can contain it, and they have been doing that. We've seen, Clemson and LSU clearly had issues, and they have fixed the majority of those problems. So these schools, all the credit in the world, they deserve it. But they're pleading to the public, read this, 3 and 5, that's on you. Because if you screw up, we have to shut down. So we'll see how this and I think that is why this buying time. And let me throw this in here too. If once you get players back on campus, I know we got to get to the Redskins thing, but once you get kids back on, back into practice, Darren, in the beginning of August, all right. So you've got kids back, and now you're starting to get students back on campus, and that's where you're going to start to see some of the mingling and the intertwining of different, just college students and things of that nature. Once you get to about mid-August, but more importantly, the end of August, because school generally starts at the end of August, you are probably going to see some spikes on all of these campuses if students are welcome back into these campuses. And in return, you're probably going to see some spikes within these programs. And so that, I think, there is where they're looking at this saying, okay, maybe it's worth pushing the season back to, if not 3 weeks or more, maybe the beginning of October, end of September start, to try to accommodate a spike if there is one, so we can, we've got a spike. What do we need? We need to fix this before we can try to play football. So if they're going back to season up, they'll have additional time to be able to do that, and if kids need to quarantine, they can do so.
Yep, and you still remain like the most optimistic guy out there, and I love you for it, and that's awesome. And there are plenty of reports out there that are giving some glimpses of hope. They are also still mostly saying, look, things are not looking good, and they're really not looking good because of the trend of the spikes and all of that stuff. So with luck, there is an ability to play. My sense right now is not nearly as positive. It's much more negative, but I'm sitting back hoping. And if Phil Steele says we're going to play, then all right, I'm in.
Look, I'm going to listen more to the people in the know than some of these, excuse my French here, dumbass sports writers that I'm just tired of looking at. I texted somebody this morning. I said, I'm done with this guy. There are some people who truly know the sport, and I love them for that.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
But it's the medical experts that you need to be looking at.
That's exactly right. I want to listen to the medical experts and the information that they give these schools and these athletics directors and these coaches and local community, the leaders of our communities. That's what that's what I want to listen to. And I have been listening to them.
That's right.
And they say, look, this is what we need to do. Okay, that's what we need to do. What I don't need is to go to CBSSports.com or SI or one of these other places and find some national sports writer who's basically condemning all of us who are positive. I don't need you in my life. I don't need it.
I don't like that opinion. Which you're welcome to have your own opinion, by the way.
Well, thank you.
But it's like I don't think anyone's out there condemning optimism. And I've seen this opinion often. I don't think anyone's condemning optimism. I think it is more of a realistic thing that people are out there, like anybody covering the sport, any fan of the sport, they need the sport as much as anybody, more than the average fan needs the sport. They need the sport.
We need the sport.
Yes, because that's financially driven right there. So they're not trying to sit there and say, don't be optimistic and we should just shut it down right now and because there's just no chance. They're giving you, based on the reports that they're hearing, what they think. And if you want to be optimistic, awesome. God, we need more optimism. Absolutely, we need more optimism.
That's me.
You are. I sit next to you every day, which is great. You feed some into me. But, I don't think they're telling you, man, calm down. Like,
that's the way I feel about
you can be optimistic.
Some of it.
I know. It can wear on you.
It just does. It does. I'm nobody has said we're not playing. And that's what I'm going. Until somebody says we're not playing, I know some of these leagues have said we're not playing. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's not a good sign. But everything else that I've looked at, nobody's come out and said we are not playing football this year, guys. Hadn't heard it. Nope. Not one person, except for some of the talking heads that you get on some of these shows, and they say, guys, I got bad news for you. We're not going to be playing football this year. What are you basing that on? Because not one person has told me that.
Well, it's easy to. To make
that's an opinion.
Yes, and it's easy to get to that opinion when you see smaller leagues dropping by the handful. And it's just a matter of when is it going to
But those
creep
don't
up.
correlate, and you know that. We both know that.
But They do in a lot of senses because now is it immediate? No, it's not immediate. But as they go, then the pressure does begin to mount because there will be a thought of, all right, if there's 5 leagues that are left standing, maybe 10. Let's include the group of 5. There's 10 leagues that are standing. Everybody else, all FCS, D2, D3, they've said, look, man, we can't do it. Are those 10 commissioners and all of those presidents collectively going to say, you know what, it's worth our risk, but it's not worth all their risk? And at that point, it becomes a very interesting conversation at that table.
Well, I don't look at it that way because Buddy Pugh yesterday spoke with Mike Gillespie up in Columbia on a Zoom call and said, look, the MEAC is shutting down because we can't afford to do the things that we need to do to play football.
Yeah.
These Power 5 leagues can afford to do it. So if you can afford to do it and you think that it's possible, yeah, give it a shot. Now, again, I'm not saying that we're going to finish a season. I think we will. I hope we will. I do think we'll certainly start a season. We will have something that resembles college football, in my opinion. That is my opinion again. But you might get into it and you go, guys, this just isn't going to work. It's just not going to work. You might get 3 weeks. You might get a week. You might get a day into it. I don't know. You might get to the final week of the year and go, we just can't do it. I don't. We don't know the answers to that. But again, that all goes back to number 3 and 5. You do your part. We do our part.
We'll do ours.
We'll
That's
figure
right.
it out.
That's right.
All right. Let's spend the next 10 minutes or so here on what is going on in D.C., Darren. I'm going to ask you a very simple question. What is going on in D.C.?
I thought you said you're going to ask me a simple question. That was not a simple question.
I mean, this.
All right. So.
Wow.
So rumors of this started to trickle out about 5-6 days ago, last weekend, that the name change was nothing compared to what's coming down. And the reason those rumors started trickling out is because the report that the Washington Post dropped yesterday details conversations with upwards of 40 people. It's 15 different allegations of sexual harassment or language, uncomfortable, hostile workplace environment, all of which, while not naming Dan Snyder directly, it is all coming under the umbrella of, look, the workplace environment is one that not only doesn't stop these things from happening, but in many ways encourages these things to happen. So that's part one. Part two, I'm going to jump to right now because there is a report out on Yahoo that says under league bylaws, Dan Snyder could be forced out. League bylaws. That's not to say he will be forced out, but he could, in fact, be forced out. Now, Snyder also did issue a statement today, and I've thrown it up on the screen. If you're not watching, I'm going to read it to you. It's very quick. The behavior described in yesterday's WAPO article has no place in our franchise or society. This is coming from Daniel Snyder. The story has strengthened my commitment to setting a new culture and standard for our team, a process that began with the hiring of Coach Rivera earlier this year. That's nonsense. This process did not start with the hiring of Coach Rivera at all. He hired Coach Rivera because he needed a coach.
Can I interject real quick?
Absolutely.
Ron Rivera, I think, has been excellent over the last day with this and beyond. But this is not Ron Rivera's job to try to fix these problems because he's consistently said, and for lack of other words, I'm your leader, I'm your coach, we are going to fix this, that. He walked into this. This is not Ron Rivera's problem to fix, in my opinion.
It is not, but he has a personal stake in making sure it is fixed because his daughter works for the team.
No doubt. And he's the coach. I mean, I get where he's coming
not his problem.
from. But Dan Snyder, if I was Dan Snyder, I'd say, don't say another word. This is on me. But I think we all know he's not going to do
That's not going to happen. He's declined countless requests for interviews. The final paragraph of this, he has hired a firm. Beth Wilkinson and his firm are empowered to do a full, unbiased investigation. I'll let you guys dive into who Beth Wilkinson is and who she's represented in the past.
Who has she represented?
Kavanaugh was one of them.
Okay.
Unbiased investigation will make any and all requisite recommendations. Upon completion of his work, will institute new policies and procedures and strengthen our human research. Like all of this, it's making me angrier and angrier just to read this thing because this goes back, and hang with me here as I take you back. 2013. 7 years ago, there's a calendar shoot with the cheerleaders in Costa Rica. As soon as the cheerleaders, arrive in Costa Rica, you know the first thing that happened? Their passports were taken from them.
I think I remember this story.
You should. So somehow it got lost a little bit, but now it's coming back to light. And it's almost like, wait a second. Like, did we as a collective group, not just the media, but did we not push this issue a little bit harder? Did we just let this thing slide without trying to figure out really what was going on? Because that's the sense. So the passports are gone. They have no identification. They many times were required to be topless. The Redskins, it was a nude resort or something.
I remember that now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's fine on one sense, but on the other sense, the Redskins invited spectators to be close up and personal with this calendar shoot with some of the ladies topless. These were sponsors, suite holders. They were granted some up-close access. Then one night, 9 of the 36 cheerleaders, they had just worked a 14-hour day, they were chosen as personal escorts for a nightclub. They have said no sexual interaction happened, but it was made very clear to them that they were to dress appropriately and seductively, for lack of a better word. So that's 7 years ago. Now this story comes out, and what do we know? We know 15 women over a span of 2006 to 2019 have issued various different reports of what happened to them.
Okay.
Over the weekend, Alex Santos and Richard Mann were fired. There was no reason given. Larry Michael, who's been the Redskins play-by-play guy for 16 years, he walks away. He just randomly retires. All of this is because they knew what was coming. They had been approached to be interviewed for this story, and they declined. Instead, they just cut ties and walked.
Clearly, this story has been in the works for quite some time.
This is a very lengthy, in-depth story. So what this proves is that, and I said this yesterday on Twitter, the Redskins don't just need a new name, and they're going to get that. They need to clean house. They need to just take a wrecking ball, leave Rivera there because he just got there and the team needs a coach. But front office-wise, get him out. Just get him out, start over. There's already 40% of the minority shareholders they want out. They're trying to sell their shares.
But what would that process look like to remove an owner?
Well, he would have to be forced out. Dan Snyder is not going to say, all right, guys, I can't take this. I'm leaving. Mm-hmm. Remember who Dan Snyder is. He made his billions or millions or however much it is in the .com era. He grew up a Redskins fan and just wanted to own the Redskins. So one day he had enough money, and he swooped in, and he won the bid, essentially, instead of Jack Kent Cook's son. So that's what we're dealing with. There are multiple reports of his interactions individually with whether male or female reporters or just average individuals. Mm-hmm. He's not a good guy. That's not breaking news, but he's not going to sell the team. The only way he's going to sell the team is if, one, Roger Goodell says, listen, man, there are bylaws in our contracts, in our league contracts that say you've got to sell the team. You may not hang on to this. There is a chance that this could spin so out of control for Snyder that he's viewed in the Donald Sterling view of just a bad human being and players aren't going to play for him. It could spin to that point. Or, I guess, if enough guys, minority shareholders, sell, then the other guys who buy in, I guess, could kind of align and say, look, we'll all come in here, but you're out.
Wow.
So I don't know if any of that happens. I think it would be best for the organization if Dan Snyder would walk away and not have to go through all of this, if he would just understand. I mean, in this whole conversation, we haven't discussed the fact that the team has been driven through the ground.
Right.
One of the most proud franchises in the history of sports. Forget the NFL. Driven through the ground. So that's over there. Now we're talking about the inside of the organization and what's wrong with that. And maybe the two are related. They probably are. It's in order to move ahead the right way and the appropriate way in a timely fashion, Dan Snyder needs to say, I'm gone. But clearly with that release today, he is not going to do that, and that isn't going to surprise anybody. He's going to have to be forced out to some degree, and maybe that does not happen. But this is a disaster. It's awful. It's nothing short of that, and anyone who says, well, Dan Snyder's an awful guy, I saw this coming. Look, you didn't see this coming. We knew there were issues. We knew there were issues. To this extent, that's it's inexcusable. It's inexcusable. And it's time to go, man. And the fan base will wrap their arms around whoever comes in next, because it's got to be a clean slate. There needs to be a fresh. If this season starts and the Washington whoever's are playing and Dan Snyder's sitting up there in the suite, that's just going to be gross.
Well, he's going to be there. I don't anticipate that this would happen before the season, Darren. I don't know if you share that same sentiment or not, but if he is removed at some point in time, I would not anticipate that would be in the very near future. But this is certainly, with everything we've dealt with in trying to get a football season in this year at this level and others, of course, and this is what you have to go into practice with, because I think we're just a day away from, I think it is tomorrow, correct, that rookies will be reporting to camp with the NFL. And this is the headline in the NFL. In addition to a couple of other things, trying to figure out how to financially compensate these guys and stuff like that. The majority of that news has been squashed because of the headlines in Washington. Obviously they've been working on this story for a long time, and now this is piling on to what has been going on with the Redskins anyways, with the name change. And here we are. Mm-hmm. Welcome to 2020, my friends. Wow.
If Daniel Snyder is forced to sell, he can resurrect 2020. He will right all of the wrongs of 2020 if he is gone.
Well, one of the questions...
all of them. The pandemic, everything that's gone awful in 2020. If Dan Snyder sells the Redskins, I can sit back and be like, 2020 wasn't too bad after all.
Yeah. Before we go to break, one of the quick questions I'll have is those three who have departed the organization within about the past week or so, why?
They've been directly named in the reports.
Yes, but why did they depart? Why did they choose to leave the organization?
Because they, unlike Dan Snyder, have a sense of responsibility and wrongdoing and understanding that their actions are 1,000%
well, that's what I'm getting at. Has somebody proven somewhere that these three individuals did something wrong is my question.
Well, they're named in the report. Is it proven like in a court of law?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But they are named, and there are multiple instances involving.
So essentially what we're saying here, what you're I don't want to say implying, but based on what we know, these three individuals left the program. Or the organization, excuse me. They left the organization, probably caught wind that this was coming.
Definitely.
And knew that they were going to be named in this report. And we're going to go ahead and do our part and resign, and whatever legalities we need to deal with down the road, we'll do that, but separate from the organization.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just like you see in many, many other instances when something happens with a coach, like who gets a DUI, sometimes he resigns. Sometimes sexual allegations forces someone to say, listen, I'm resigning. There's no difference.
Yeah.
The only difference is the guys who were fired or, in Larry Michaels' case, resigned, they're not the top guy. In the other instances, it's the top guy who is saying, I've done something wrong, and I am going to resign because of it, if it's of a serious nature like this. In this case, that's not what's happening. In this case, it's Dan Snyder still sitting there while other guys are dropping.
The Redskins, more than likely, will win the Super Bowl this year in 2020 because of all this.
Oh,
what
yeah?
What are you going to say then when they win the Super Bowl?
I'll say, go Red Tails, Red Foxes, Red Wolves, whoever we're going to be.
Whatever it may be. All right, it is time for a late timeout. Michael Flint, he'll join us next, part 2 of an 8-part series. Today we'll look at the Gamecocks' defensive line in 2020. Phil Steele likes him. We'll see if Michael does when we return on the JB and Goldwater Show.
DB's Cheesesteaks, the tastiest, juiciest, and now award-winning cheesesteaks in the Low Country. DB's Cheesesteaks delivers, and not just in quality. Download DoorDash, Uber Eats, or your delivery app of choice and have it dropped off at your doorstep. Original chicken, buffalo chicken, even pizza cheesesteaks, not to mention incredible cheeseburgers, massive hot dogs, and dynamite hoagies. It's all there for you and your family. DB's Cheesesteaks in West Ashley. dbscheesesteaks.com.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Low Country. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit stonoferrygolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. stonoferrygolf.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
All right, 1:35, final segment of the work week. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show. If you are watching online, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, thank you so much. And if you're listening on the Podbean app, we certainly appreciate that as well. Darren Goldwater, Jamie Bradford here for about 25 more minutes. Michael Flint is going to join us in just a minute. He is in the car, so we're probably going to have to call him, if that's okay with you there, Captain Darren.
That is okay with me.
So we'll get him on the phone here in just a second.
Yes, I'm just verifying that I've got his number without giving it out over the air, and I do. So I'll be able to get him on here in 1 second.
Yeah, all you credit hawks out there, debt collectors, waiting on us to dump Michael's number live over the airways. But he'll join us in just one quick second, and we will take a look at the Gamecocks defensive line. All right, let me get you a quick update from Muirfield Golf Club, where Tiger Woods is really probably not going to be in the weekend after a rough day, but Ryan Palmer currently is in the lead at 9 under. He's in the clubhouse, and he's tied with Tony Finau, also at 9 under. John Rahm is at 8 under, and then Gary Woodland and Chaz Reavie sit at 6 under. At the top of the leaderboard. Phil Mickelson, by the way, 2 over. His round is done today. The projected cut right now is at 2 over, and Tiger Woods is 3 over, 4 over for the afternoon. So he's going to need that cut line to drop in order to get into the weekend. By the way, Brooks Koepka also 3 over. So as of now, Brooksy and Tiger would not make the weekend at the Memorial. But this guy always makes the weekend. It's Michael Flint, former wide receiver at South Carolina, and he joins us now. What's up, dude?
Oh, nothing much, guys. Y'all doing all right?
Yeah, hanging in there.
He always makes the weekend. He just doesn't always make the show.
Technical difficulties, man. I'm technically challenged.
No kidding. No, I'm just joking. Michael, of course, former wide receiver at South Carolina, and he is joining us as this is part 2 of an 8-part series as we preview the Gamecock football program heading into the 2020 football season, Mike. So, all right, we'll spend about, probably maybe 20 minutes or so on this at the most. But this week we're going to talk about the defensive line. Had Phil Steele on earlier today. He mentioned it's a talented group for South Carolina. He likes those guys. You and I think, like these guys as well. When you look inside and who's going to start at those tackle positions, Zach Pickens, here's a 5-star kid. Gamecocks beat out the Clemson Tigers for his services out of Anderson, South Carolina. He's a sophomore this year. You got Ricky Sandage. He's back, a young man, a former 4-star from Concord, North Carolina. You got Keir Thomas returning as a redshirt senior out of Miami with a ton of experience. I think it's really between those three as to who's going to start at those two positions, Michael, unless you've heard differently from me. But if it is between those three, that is an incredibly talented and experienced group of young men.
No, there's no doubt about it. I think between Zach Pickens and Rick Sanders, there's a ton of talent right there. I think Zach Pickens got a lot of good experience last year and made some plays and kind of showed flashes of why he was a 5-star kid coming out of high school. And so his the future is bright for him. Rick Sanders, I think, has a lot of untapped potential that I think is starting to come around and made some plays last year. I think Keir Thomas is such an X factor with this group, and as a kid that has done some really good things. And he's a guy that can give you that versatility, to be able to line up in different fronts, and give Coach Muschamp and Coach Robinson the flexibility to move guys around without having to substitute different personnel. And he's a guy that can line up inside and rush the passer. He can line up outside. He's not the biggest kid in the world, but he's got so much fight in him, and he's made a lot of plays. And he's an extremely valuable piece, of that front four, and so versatile that can really help.
Michael, obviously replacing Javon Kinlaw is near impossible. I mean, if you remember when JD departed for the NFL, there was nobody that was going to replace Jadeveon Clowney. But the way that I kind of see this is a collective effort. I mean, if you look back last year at Javon's stats, he certainly had a nice year from a statistical standpoint, but he also provided opportunities for so many other players to go in there and do some things. I mean, even guys like Izzy McQuamu. I mean, the game that made Izzy's career thus far and that has him on some All-American lists this year was the Georgia game, and one of those picks, the one that he took to the house, was because of Javon Kinlaw, who just bull rushed right through the center and almost hit Jake Fromm and took him to the ground and made him throw that duck to the sideline that Izzy picked off and ran to the end zone. So, in your opinion, is there somebody who approaches this talent, or is this more of a collective effort to replace what he brought to their football team?
I think the 95% of the programs in the country, it's hard. You can't really replace a first round talent like that, especially with the size and the athleticism that he has. But I think the guys that are coming in that are going to be able to play are going to be able to provide a level of play similar to what Kinlaw did. I mean, he was so disruptive. He the things he did, a lot of what he did doesn't show up in the stat books as far as eating up double teams to allow other people to have one-on-one matchups. I think a guy like Rick Sanders, a guy like Zach Pickens can definitely help. But it's tough to replace that kind of production and what he did that didn't really show up in the stat books per se. But across the front, I think those two guys, you start there. And I think those guys can definitely, you won't see much of a drop-off between, what Javon Kinlaw was able to do, versus what those two guys can do, just based on the potential and athleticism that they have. I mean, Zach Pickens is, athletically, on the same level. And I think Rick Sanders can do the same thing. I think for, Rick Sanders, it's getting that light bulb to go off, for him. I think being a young kid, I think this is the kind of a year that is a big year for him. But, I definitely don't see much of a drop-off. You may see a different style per se with, utilizing those guys' strengths and using some different fronts, to take advantage of the talent and that we have up there.
Well, I'll tell you what, they're big kids. I mean, Zach is 6'3", about 300 pounds, and Ricky's 6'5", about 300 pounds. And then, I mentioned Keir Thomas. He's the most experienced of this group. This is his 5th year in the program. He's up around 300 pounds now. He's about 6'2". And then you add in other guys, and these are former four-star prospects, and Joe Anderson, MJ Webb. Add in a kid like Devontae Davis, who they're excited about out of Georgia Military College. Jabari Ellis, a big kid, redshirt senior, also a Georgia Military kid. They've got big bodies up front, but they also have athletic bodies up front. And you've mentioned before that Will Muschamp over the last couple of years in particular has really tried to recruit athleticism.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And another guy I think you can throw in there as well is kind of Kingsley and, JJ Enigbare, where, he's shown the versatility to line up inside and outside. And I think he's another guy that's going to be in the mix in there as well, whether he's lined up at defensive end or, an obvious, third down or obvious passing situations, a guy you can slide inside that can have a lot of success rushing the passer. I think he's a guy that's, not the same frame as Keir Thomas, but a guy that you can move around on the line of scrimmage, to be able to create a little, confusion and chaos, for the quarterback, especially pre-snap read.
Yeah, JJ, not to steal the show here, Darren, but Darren knows that you and I get into this little rhythm, and we just can't stop doing what we're doing.
I'll let you guys go back and forth. You got a former Gamecock. You got a guy who, breeds Garnet. His blood is not red.
No, it's not. It's actually black at times. You mentioned JJ. So JJ showed up on Phil Steele's preseason fourth team All SEC. There's some other lists that he's beginning to get mentioned for. People look at his size, and that is intriguing, very, very similar to what you just mentioned, because he can play both in and out per his athleticism. Maybe if there's one question, it's who's going to be that defensive end. Is it Aaron Sterling? I don't know. Aaron Sterling is still a little bit undersized to play out there in the SEC, but he certainly is experienced, and that might be able to make up. Michael, you can correct me there. And then you bring the buck position into this, and I am just really hard-pressed to find somebody. It might not be in game one, but starting in game two and beyond, I'm hard-pressed to find somebody who's going to end up being better than Jordan Burch. I know that he's getting on the field here late because he graduated essentially on time per high school rules, at the end of May, and then he's joining the team late this summer. But the kid is talented, and there's no way I don't see him out there playing. And if he is and starting, you add Zach Pickens and Jordan Burch to the starting lineup, and you've got 2 5-stars on the defensive line. That's remarkable from where they were just 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, and I think, with Jordan Burch getting in a little bit late and, with everything that's going on, I think, the expectations of, what, you expect him to do have to be kind of tapered back a little bit. You look at kind of the expectation that was on Zach Pickens coming in this past year. Everybody was wanting, 8 sacks, tackles for a lot, everything. But you got to kind of pull it back because the college game, coming from high school to the college game is different. There's a different level of physicality up front that these guys have to get used to and gain that experience. But I think, Jordan Burch is going to do some good things and is going to, play a lot of snaps. But I think a lot of that experience comes into it. I think a guy like Brad Johnson, who, from, the beginning of spring and the limited amount of practices they had, a lot of good things came out about him and, kind of the growth and maturity and the steps forward that he's taken to really be productive. He's played a good bit, but with the injury last year, being able to take that red shirt, he was a young kid already coming in. And I think he's a guy that was starting to turn some heads as far as that buck position and really being able to mix things up. I think that's a guy that is really going to play into the mix too. But, I think Jordan Burch is definitely going to play. Play a lot and have some success. But, it definitely does take time for some of these freshmen to come in and really adjust to the college game. But, the one guy you mentioned previously, Joe Anderson, I think he's a kid that I was really interested to see how he kind of turned the corner from that redshirt year, into spring practice. And, with that being cut short, seeing how he does coming into fall camp, because he was a big kid that was highly regarded out of Tennessee. And, I think he showed some flashes as well during his, during practice and things as a red shirt. So he's a guy that I've been real interested to see, kind of how he takes those steps forward and really becoming a topic of conversation in that mix of, getting some quality snaps.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. If you go back just a couple of years ago and you look at the roster, no offense to any of those young men that were playing football at the time, but you compare them, most importantly, Michael, to the athleticism of this group now, and then you take that one step further, take it to the recruiting board, and you look at the wins that Will Muschamp and his staff have had over the last couple of years, and going up against the best schools in the country to get some of these kids. You're talking about Georgia, you're talking about Clemson, you're talking about Alabama and others that they have beat out for some of these kids like Jordan Birch and Zach Pickens and Joe Anderson and others who are going to, Ricky Sandage, guys like that, they have done remarkably well on the recruiting trail. As a matter of fact, I don't know of anybody in the conference, and I'm not being biased by saying this, who's had the success that South Carolina's had, which has been outside of 2017 when they won 9 games, fairly minimal under Will Muschamp. I don't know of any other team in this league that has recruited as well as they have up front to get where we are now in 2020, where this group is now a strength.
Yeah, no, it 100% right about that, and that's the one thing that they've done such a good job on is building depth. I think the defensive line is one of the positions that you need to build the most depth at, because those guys, bigger guys doing a lot of that running. It's you want to keep guys as fresh as possible into the fourth quarter, and a lot of those big guys, once they start to lose steam and don't have as much to give, it's hard to get that back late in the game. And so, that's a critical piece in being able to, kind of play all 4 quarters, especially up front defensively, because, there's so much that those guys do. So keeping them fresh and building depth is huge, because a lot of those guys can't find that, can't get back from, 60% back up to 70, 80% just based on a little bit of rest time. So that's crucial for them. And, and one of the most important things I'm, wanted to look at this year was, stopping the run and doing a better job of stopping the run and really maintaining a lot of that gap, those gap fits, and not getting pushed out of the run lanes. And seeing how some of these guys do, because having some smaller guys up front, that's something that you can rush the passer and have a lot of success rushing the passer. But then when it comes time to stop the run, some of those guys get pushed out of the gap, their gap responsibility. And that opens up holes for big chunk plays, like what they say, the explosive plays. And so that's one thing I'm looking for. I'm looking to see this year is kind of how we play how we stop the run.
And it's also worth note, I mentioned Jordan Birch potentially starting at that buck position. Remember, although the Gamecocks did lose Javon Kinlaw, and that is the big name that everybody focuses on, they lost both their first and second teamers from the buck position last year, in DJ Wonham and Danny Fennell. So that is that's the most important position on this defense. That is what Will Muschamp and T-Rob, they recruit for that position. That position dictates pretty much everything they're going to do, and that's why it was such a big win to get Jordan Birch, Michael. Saying all that, we'll finish with this. You mentioned, the flexibility and having strength up front, Jordan having to kind of grow into the game at this level and things of that nature, being able to fill gaps, not get pushed around and shoved around. Well, Jeff Dillman was replaced as a strength coach, and here comes Paul Jackson from Ole Miss, who is nationally renowned and maybe the best hire Will Muschamp made this entire off-season, believe it or not. Everybody's going to focus with the coaches on the field, but Paul Jackson, what he does behind the scenes is as important as anybody. There were 2 positions that I said, okay, he is going to be crucial to these 2. One was wide receiver. We talked about it last week. The other, this one right here. How big of an impact can he make on these kids and being able to stay healthy throughout the year to maintain that depth?
Oh, it's critical. I think that, like you said, I think that was the biggest hire that was made in the off season. Previously we continued to have a lot of these soft tissue injuries, hamstring injuries, and a lot of these different types of soft tissue issues that kept guys out of ball games at times. And so, that's the biggest thing. I think, they work on the flexibility, the explosion. It's not just about, who's the strongest guy in the room. But, it's also about that the explosiveness, the flexibility, the bend that these guys have in their hips to be able to stay low and maintain leverage, on these offensive linemen. I think that's, like you said, the biggest hire we made. And I think there's a kind of a transformation of what you've seen of how these guys worked out. You see a lot of focus on speed, quickness, agility, and explosion as well. As some of the videos that have been put out with guys jumping hurdles and sprint work and agility work, but also the explosive work too.
152 on this Friday afternoon. Michael Flint, former wide receiver at South Carolina, part 2 of our 8-part series previewing the Gamecock football program. Wide receivers last week, defensive linemen, defensive ends, buck position players today. Anything that I missed worth noting as we start to get maybe towards fall practice in a couple of weeks?
I think another guy that may have been, lost in a little bit of the translation that was a red shirt last year that I've been interested to see as well is Rod Fitton.
Oh, good
and
point.
He's a guy that was one of the first commitments of the class last year, and and he kind of, I think the coaches saw the projectability in him as far as his size and the type of good weight that he could put on and really fit into the mold of that buck position. And he's a guy that's really kind of transformed his body and put on a lot of good weight and muscle. With his size, not exactly the biggest, but kind of fits that mold of that kind of buck position, that hybrid type, player can do. And he's another guy that I was, looking forward to see, from coming in last year being a little bit undersized to really starting to grow into his body and physically mature and utilize that time in the weight room.
Yeah, no question. Good note there, and excited to see Brad Johnson this year too. Hopefully, as a senior, he's put on a little bit of weight himself and able to kind of, a couple of years ago, Mike, I think a lot of Darren, if you watched Carolina football the last couple of years, a lot of these names that we just mentioned here, Michael and I have talked about this numerous times. We felt like they were fairly talented players, but just got blown off the ball when the ball was snapped. And Michael, we'd be sitting in Williams-Brice Stadium going, dude, what are we doing up there?
No, that's 4 or 5 yards, immediately.
Exactly. In the SEC, you can't cut it like that. So we'll see how it all unfolds. Michael, thank you so much, my friend. Good to hear your voice. Better late than never. The whole 9 yards.
That's it, man. That technology, I struggle with at times.
Hey, Phil Steele said to tell you hello. He said you were his favorite player growing up as a kid.
I'm sure that was it.
Michael Flint, the Carolina receiver from the 40s.
I will say, yeah. I had to do an interview the other day on a Gamecocks podcast. They invited me on. It was Keith Alsep, who knows your family quite well. Was the basketball coach at Goose Creek when your mom was there before she went to Wando. Mm-hmm. And he was telling me a story. He said, the first day I was there as the coach, I didn't know anybody. He said, I went into the cafeteria, didn't know any teachers, didn't know anything. I went and sat down or went to sit down at lunch, and this sweet lady walked up and had just bought me some lunch and put it down and said, "Hi, my name's Charlotte Flint." He said, that was the first friend I made at Goose Creek, but had great things to say about the Flint family. So
that's right.
Figured I'd pass that along to you.
No, I appreciate that. Hey, I could have been the favorite player from one of those NCAA games on.
Well, you were mine. Yeah, I made you 99 on mine, dude. You could move.
That was probably the best I ever moved.
Yeah, I just couldn't get the red hair. You could design players. They had no curly red hair option.
Trust me, the curls, even when you're making the new emojis or whatever, you just can't find the beautiful locks that we both have.
You can't get the curls.
That's right. A rare breed for sure.
Oh, yeah, no question about that. All right, I'll holler at you later. Thanks again, brother.
All right, thanks, guys. Enjoyed it.
There you go, Michael Flint taking a look at the D-line group, which I think it is a talented group for South Carolina. They're going to have to be if they play 10 games. 5 of their 10 are against top 11 teams, so good luck. All right, before we get out of here, thanks to Patriots Point for presenting our national anthem every day at 1 o'clock. Also at Patriots Point, tonight, it's back. Head to holycitydrivein.com. That's where you can find this weekend's list of movies. It is the drive-in movie series in Mount Pleasant over at the foot of the Ravenel Bridge. So we would encourage all of you to head out tonight, back your trucks in, tailgate, have some fun, buy the food and drinks there. And don't forget your dancing shoes, because tonight is the showing of Dirty Dancing, one of the all-time classics who, I can't believe Patrick Swayze was in that movie. I thought he died in Ghost, but I guess I was wrong.
He did.
Oh.
But he came back.
Oh. Well,
as Whoopi Goldberg.
Maybe it's a ghost of Patrick Swayze.
Or something like that.
Harry Potter is tomorrow, and then on Sunday night, the showing of Monsters, Inc. Great movies. at Patriots Point. HolyCityDriveIn.com for tickets, showtimes, and more. PatriotsPoint.org for all of the information to tour Patriots Point. But before we get out of here, come on. Anybody think we forgot? No way. What day is today? It's July the 17th. And I'm going to do this. Let's start it off good. This could be a big weekend for the JB and Goldwater Show. Today is National Lottery Day. Buy yourselves a lottery ticket, folks.
Are you like me? Every time you buy a ticket, you're like, I'm going to win. I don't.
My life's about to change.
I believe it every time I buy it.
Every time, which is rare. But when I do, I feel like my life's going to change. Maybe someone's life will change. Happy National Lottery Day. Happy World Emoji Day. Use your favorite emojis while texting.
And build a curly hair emoji.
Yeah. Happy National Yellow Pig Day. If you celebrate that, good for you. Happy National Tattoo Day. If you've got one, congratulations, Darren.
Bam!
There you go. Happy National Tattoo Day. And Happy National Peach Ice Cream Day.
Oh, man. Grace and our daughter would be all up in that.
Homemade peach ice cream is fantastic. This weekend, Happy National Caviar Day. Happy National Sour Candy Day. Happy National Strawberry Rhubarb Wine Day tomorrow. And on Sunday, folks, one of the greatest days of the year, Happy National Daiquiri Day, but most importantly, Happy National Ice Cream Day on Sunday.
Solid. Probably get the ice cream truck rolling around in this neighborhood.
Right. Get the ice cream truck. Celebrate in style this weekend with the sweets. Happy National Ice Cream and Daiquiri Day on Sunday afternoon. All right. Thanks to Phil Steele, thanks to Rafael Esparza, and thanks to Michael Flint for joining us on the JB and Goldwater Show today. As always, thanks to Darren Goldwater for his hard work and allowing me to ramble on like I do.
It's okay. It's fun. I put my producer hat on for it.
Yeah, you did a great job, as you always do.
You too, buddy.
We'll put our football hats on Monday. Lawton Swan, he'll join us to preview another position group for Clemson, and we'll get closer to hopefully a good season. Enjoy golf this weekend, folks. Have a great weekend. Thanks for listening to the JV and Goldwater Show.